Welcome to another episode of My Weird Prompts, an AI-generated podcast featuring the random prompts of Daniel Rosehill as answered by a revolving cast of friendly AI characters. Join us for deep dives into AI, technology, and whatever other random thing Daniel finds fascinating today. Subscribe on Spotify or your favorite podcatcher. Now, today's episode.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
Hey Herman and Corn, you know how I'm doing one thing and then I think of something completely unrelated but slightly connected, and then I send in a prompt, and that's pretty much the secret sauce of this podcast. For those wondering, there's no imagine actually making an episode plan for this. There's no planning; it's just spontaneous. So this is an example. I'm opening up a IP camera, and I'm making some good headway on the clutter in the living room. You'll be glad to hear. But this is embed clutter. So it's an IP camera that we're using for keeping track of little Ezra while we're here for the next 6 months or so in this current rental. As things recently took a kind of challenging turn with our landlord, we don't even feel comfortable sticking a camera onto the wall. So I've had to guess. It literally looks like something out of a George Orwell novel. It's it's the ultimate makeshift home baby monitor camera system. It's a IP camera stand, for those who want to picture this, that is screwed into our kitchen island, and on top of that there is the camera. But it gives me a direct line of sight of Ezra's play area, where he's constantly he's rolling around, and recently has begun putting literally anything that can be fit into one's mouth into his mouth. So this is my wife and I both use it to keep an eye on Ezra, and it's really helpful. So anyway, I'm unpacking this IP camera, and as sometimes happens, it gives you a little sticker. The sticker says, "Warning, area under 24-hour CCTV video surveillance." I'm not going to put up the sticker because that would be very strange to put that up in my house, but it makes me think about something I read once many years ago. Apparently, on Google Street View, we talked on a number of episodes about the work of the intelligence community. And one of the kind of famous things that I guess is a real thing, because it does definitely exist, is this concept of safe houses. I'll get to the connection if you give me just one more minute. So when Google Street View was becoming a thing, there was this legend on the internet. I don't know if it was ever confirmed to be real or debunked, that there was a specific kind of CCTV sign that indicated that there was something really sensitive there. These signs, the sticker I'm holding in my hands at the moment, you see these kind of all over the place. Sometimes people put them up, I think, just to give the impression of security. It creates a deterrent effect. Nothing particularly special about them, but they usually say some variation of, 24-hour security, CCTV in operation, or guarded by, and then some alarm company, right? That's kind of the standard text. But apparently in London, for a period, there was a variation of this sticker that said something slightly different, along the lines of area under constant surveillance for reasons of national security. And that was kind of a hint that there was some kind of clandestine stuff going on there, because you don't usually see national security given as the reason for surveillance on the sign. So whether that's true or not, I'd love to get into this topic, Herman and Corn. There are some people who really kind of geek out on this stuff. They go into Google Street View, but it does. I think an interesting topic that we covered before was front companies. We talked about the crazy operation that Israel's Mossad pulled off, basically supply chain poisoning, in which they intercepted these pagers and then rigged them out with some explosives. And that really was, I guess, an interesting case study in front companies, because this whole world of OEM and non-OEM resellers is kind of so murky to begin with, that you can see how it might be a good place for someone to just say, we're just another person who's reselling this stuff that comes from Taiwan. So in the same vein, I presume that these safe houses, they don't come with a sign on the door saying that that's what they are. So likely some kind of a cover story has to be invented. So Herman and Corn, let's talk today about two interesting topics, I think, that we can talk about safe houses and front companies and the intriguing disguises that can be used to make them seem like very ordinary things, except for eagle-eyed observers paying very careful attention to the type of CCTV sticker they might see on the side of the road. Over to you, Herman and Corn.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my weird prompts. I am Corn, and I am joined as always by my brother,
Herman Poppleberry, at your service, and we are coming to you from a very rainy Jerusalem today.
It really is coming down out there, but luckily we have plenty to talk about inside. Our housemate Daniel sent us an interesting one today. He was actually setting up a new security camera in the living room for his son, Ezra, and it came with one of those yellow warning stickers. You know the ones, Herman, that say this area is under constant surveillance.
I know them well. They are ubiquitous. Most people just peel them off and throw them in the trash, or maybe stick them on a window as a low-cost deterrent.
Exactly. But Daniel was saying that this sticker reminded him of a deep dive he did into the world of safe houses and front companies. Specifically, he mentioned an urban legend or maybe a real tip about certain CCTV signs in London that supposedly mark sensitive government locations if they use very specific wording.
Oh, I know exactly what he is talking about. This is a classic piece of open-source intelligence lore. The idea that if a sign says surveillance is being conducted for reasons of national security, rather than just public safety or crime prevention, you have likely stumbled onto something much more interesting than a standard police camera.
It is a fascinating starting point. It gets into this whole world of hiding in plain sight. We usually think of top-secret operations as being buried under a mountain or hidden behind 10-foot concrete walls. But often, the most effective way to hide something is to make it look so boring that the human eye just slides right over it.
That is the essence of urban camouflage. And honestly, Corn, I've been wanting to talk about this ever since that massive supply chain incident with the pagers that happened recently. It really highlighted how these front companies are not just a relic of the Cold War. They are active, complex, and incredibly deeply embedded in our global economy.
Right, and I think we should dig into both sides of this. The physical side, like the safe houses and the weird architectural tells, and then the corporate side, the front companies that act as the skin for these operations. So, Herman, let us start with that CCTV sign thing. Is that actually a real thing, or is it just internet folklore?
It is a bit of both, which is usually how the best secrets work. In the United Kingdom, the Data Protection Act and various Surveillance Commissioner codes actually require that signs inform the public who is operating the cameras and why. Most signs will say something like, "These cameras are operated by the local council for the purpose of public safety." But there have been documented cases in London where signs appeared with a specific phrase, "for the purpose of national security."
And the theory is that those belong to the security service, also known as MI5, or maybe the Secret Intelligence Service, MI6.
That is the theory. When you see that specific legal justification, it suggests the data is not going to a standard police station or a mall security office. It is being routed into a different legal framework. It is a tiny crack in the facade. If you are a regular person, you do not care. But if you are trained to look for anomalies, that one extra word, national, is a massive red flag, or a green light depending on what you are looking for.
It is funny because the sign is there to comply with the law, but by complying with the law, they are inadvertently signaling their presence to anyone who knows the code. It is a beautiful irony. But safe houses go way beyond just a sign on a pole, right? I remember reading about buildings in major cities that are literally just shells.
Oh, absolutely. This is one of my favorite topics. If you go to 23 and 24 Leinster Gardens in London, it looks like a perfectly normal pair of high-end terrace houses. They have the same columns, the same windows, the same front doors as all the other houses on the street. But if you look closely, the windows are painted gray on the inside. There are no mail slots in the doors.
And if you go around the back?
If you go around the back, you realize the houses are only 5 feet thick. They are literally just a facade. They were built in the 1860s to hide a massive vent for the Underground Railway when the trains were still powered by steam. They needed a place for the smoke to escape, but they did not want to ruin the aesthetics of a wealthy neighborhood, so they built a fake house.
That is a classic example of architectural disguise. But in the world of intelligence, a safe house usually needs to be functional. It needs to hold people or equipment. So, how do they pick a location that does not stand out?
The key is being aggressively average. You do not want the house with the perfectly manicured lawn, and you definitely do not want the house with the overgrown weeds. You want the house that looks like a middle manager and his family live there. You want a car in the driveway that is 10 years old but clean, a Toyota Camry or a Honda Accord. You want the lights to go on and off at normal times.
I imagine there are tells, though. If I am a curious neighbor, what am I looking for?
Well, the tells are usually found in the utilities and the security. For example, a house that looks like a standard suburban home but has a commercial-grade air conditioning unit that is way too big for the square footage. That suggests there is a lot of computer hardware inside generating heat. Or you look at the windows. Are they reinforced? Is there a subtle reflective film that prevents people from seeing in even during the day?
What about the people coming and going? I assume they do not all wear black suits and sunglasses.
No, they would probably be wearing cargo shorts and carrying groceries. But the real tell is the lack of patterns over the long term. If you never see kids, if you never see a dog, if the people living there never seem to have friends over for a barbecue, humans are social creatures. When a house lacks the normal social exhaust of a family, it creates a sort of vacuum that observant people can sense.
It is like the uncanny valley, but for real estate. Something just feels off. Now, let us pivot to the corporate side, because I think this is where it gets even more sophisticated. Daniel mentioned front companies, and we have seen some incredible examples of this lately. When we talk about a front company, we are not just talking about a fake name on a door, right?
No, the sophisticated ones are what we call deep cover companies. They are fully functional businesses. They have real employees who might not even know who they are actually working for. They pay taxes, they have a website, they have a LinkedIn page, they might even have a booth at a trade show.
This brings us to that Hungarian company, BAC Consulting, that was linked to the pager explosions in Lebanon. That was a wild story. On the surface, it looked like a legitimate distributor for a Taiwanese company, Gold Apollo.
Exactly. And this is a masterclass in how a front company operates in the modern era. You do not just create a company the day before an operation. You might set it up years in advance. You let it do legitimate business for a while. You have it ship some actual pagers, some actual electronics. You build a history of successful transactions. You build trust.
So when the big order comes in, the one you want to intercept or modify, no one suspects anything because you have a 2-year track record of being a boring, reliable middleman.
Precisely. And the layers are what make it so hard to peel back. You might have the Hungarian company, which is owned by a shell company in the British Virgin Islands, which is managed by a law firm in Panama. By the time an investigator gets to the third layer, the trail has gone cold, or, more likely, the company just vanishes. The website goes down, the office lease is canceled, and the people involved disappear into the wind.
It makes me wonder about the ethics and the risks of this. If these front companies are embedded in the global supply chain, it means that at any given moment, a certain percentage of the products we use might have passed through the hands of an intelligence agency.
That is the second-order effect that really worries me, Corn. It undermines the fundamental trust in global trade. If you are a CEO and you realize that your supplier might actually be a front for a foreign government, you start to rethink your entire logistics strategy. It pushes countries toward isolationism. They want everything made locally so they can verify the chain of custody.
But that is almost impossible in 2026. Everything is so interconnected. You cannot build a smartphone or a laptop without parts from 20 different countries.
You are right. It is a total nightmare for security. And it is not just physical goods. Think about software. How many small app development firms or cybersecurity startups are actually front companies meant to get their code into sensitive networks? We talk about the Trojan horse, but a modern front company is like a Trojan horse that also happens to be a very profitable and well-reviewed horse breeding business.
That is a great analogy. It is a horse that actually wins races until the moment it is told to do something else. I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, the idea of the employees not knowing. How do you run a company where the staff thinks they are selling pages, but the boss is actually a case officer?
It is called compartmentalization. You hire a legitimate office manager, a legitimate sales team, and a legitimate accountant. You give them real work to do. They handle the 80% of the business that is actually real. The other 20%, the sensitive stuff, is handled by the owner or a very small group of people behind closed doors. The employees are the best possible cover because their behavior is genuine. They really think they are just working at a boring tech distributor.
It is brilliant and terrifying at the same time. It also means that if the company gets busted, those people are left holding the bag. Their careers are ruined, and they might even face legal trouble for things they did not know they were doing.
It is a high-stakes game for sure. But let us talk about the other side of this, the spotting of these companies. Because just like the CCTV signs, there are tells in the corporate world if you know where to look.
Okay, give me some. If I'm looking at a company and I suspect it is a front, what are the red flags?
One big one is the lack of a digital footprint before a certain date. If a company claims to have been in business for 10 years, but their domain was only registered 18 months ago, that is a red flag. Or you look at the physical office. If you go to the address and it is just a virtual office or a mail forwarding service, that is common for small businesses, but it is also a staple of front companies.
What about the leadership?
That is where it gets interesting. Often the listed directors of these companies are what we call professional directors. They are people who are paid to have their names on the paperwork for hundreds of different companies. If you search a director's name and see they are on the board of a laundry service, a tech firm, a mining company, and a toy store, all located in different countries, you are looking at a shell.
I remember we talked about this a bit back in episode 312 when we were looking at money laundering. It is the same infrastructure, right? The intelligence agencies are using the same tools as the cartels and the tax evaders.
Exactly. It is a shared ecosystem. They use the same law firms, the same offshore jurisdictions, and the same methods of obfuscation. Sometimes they even accidentally bump into each other. There are stories of undercover agents from two different agencies accidentally trying to recruit each other because they both thought the other one was a criminal.
That would make for a great sitcom. But seriously, the level of sophistication now with artificial intelligence and deepfakes must be making this even harder to detect. You can create a fake CEO with a fake history, fake videos of them giving speeches, and a fake social media following in an afternoon.
It is making the old methods of verification obsolete. We used to say, well, I saw him on the news, so he must be real. Now, that means nothing. In the next few years, I think we are going to see a total shift in how we establish trust. It won't be about what you can see or hear. It will be about cryptographic proof of identity and supply chain.
Like a blockchain for every component in a device.
Something like that. A digital birth certificate for every chip and every company. But even then, the intelligence agencies are always one step ahead. If you build a secure system, they will find the one person in the chain who can be bribed or coerced to give them a backdoor.
Let us go back to the physical side for a moment. You mentioned the fake houses in London. Are there examples like that here in Jerusalem or in other modern cities?
Oh, they are everywhere. In New York City, there is a famous building at 33 Thomas Street. It is a massive, windowless concrete skyscraper. It was built by AT&T in the 70s to house telephone switching equipment. It is designed to withstand a nuclear blast and can be self-sufficient for weeks.
I have seen that one. It looks like something out of a dystopian movie. It is called the Long Lines Building, right?
Yes. And while it has a legitimate purpose, leaked documents have suggested it also houses a massive national security agency listening post. It is a perfect example of hiding in plain sight. It is so big and so ugly that people just stop looking at it. It becomes part of the background noise of the city.
It is interesting that the two strategies are either to be so boring you are invisible, or so imposing that you are intimidating.
Exactly. It is the gray man versus the fortress. Most safe houses go for the gray man approach. You want to be the person that the waiter doesn't remember 5 minutes after you leave the restaurant.
I am curious about the psychological toll on the people who live in these safe houses. If you are an operative and you are living in a boring apartment in a boring suburb, pretending to be a boring person, how do you keep your sanity?
It is incredibly difficult. You are living a double life 24 hours a day. You can never truly relax. Every time someone knocks on the door, every time a neighbor says hello, you have to be in character. There is a reason why intelligence officers have such high rates of burnout and relationship issues. The isolation is not just physical, it is emotional. You are surrounded by people, but you are completely alone in your truth.
It reminds me of that movie, The Conversation, where Gene Hackman plays a surveillance expert who becomes obsessed with the idea that he is being watched. When you spend your life creating masks for things, you start to see masks everywhere. You start to wonder if your neighbor is also an operative, or if the grocery store is a front.
That is the rabbit hole corn. And once you start looking for the signs, you really do see them everywhere. You see the weirdly placed vent, the extra security camera, the company that doesn't seem to produce anything. Most of the time, it is just a weird architectural choice or a poorly run business. But every once in a while, it is something more.
So, what is the takeaway for our listeners? Should they be walking around their neighborhoods looking for gray windows and weird CCTV signs?
Haha, probably not if they want to keep their own sanity. But I think the real takeaway is a healthy skepticism about the world around us. We tend to take things at face value. We see a house and think house. We see a company and think company. But the world is much more layered than that.
It is about recognizing that there is a hidden geography in our cities. There are places that exist on a map, but do not exist in the way we think they do. And there are companies that move millions of dollars, but are essentially ghosts.
And as the digital and physical worlds continue to merge, those layers are going to get even thinner. The front company of the future might not even have an office. It might just be an autonomous agent running on a server in a country that doesn't ask questions.
That is a chilling thought. A ghost company run by a ghost. Herman, this has been a fascinating deep dive. I think we have covered a lot of ground, from London street signs to Hungarian pages.
It is a deep well, Corn. We could probably do another 10 episodes just on the history of famous safe houses. Did you know that during the Cold War, the CIA had a safe house in San Francisco that was decorated like a high-end brothel?
Wait, really?
Yes, it was called Operation Midnight Climax. They were testing the effects of LSD on unwitting subjects. They chose that specific disguise because they knew the people coming and going would be less likely to talk to the police or the neighbors.
Wow. That is a whole other level of dark. It just goes to show that the disguise is always tailored to the specific blind spots of the target audience.
Exactly. Hiding is not about being invisible. It is about managing what people see and how they interpret it.
Well, I think that is a perfect place to wrap this up. We have given people plenty to think about next time they see a yellow security sticker or a house with no mail slot.
And hey, if you are listening to this and you happen to live next to a house with 24-hour national security surveillance, maybe just keep your head down and keep walking.
Good advice, Herman. Before we go, I want to say a big thank you to Daniel for sending in this prompt. It really sparked a great conversation. And to our listeners, if you've been enjoying the show, we would really appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your podcast app or on Spotify. It genuinely helps other people discover the show and keeps us going.
It really does. We love seeing your feedback and hearing your own weird theories.
You can find all our past episodes, including the ones we mentioned today, at our website, myweirdprompts.com. We have a full archive there, and you can also find our contact form if you want to send us a prompt of your own.
We are also on Spotify and most other major podcast platforms. Just search for My Weird Prompts.
All right, I think that is it for today. Herman, any final thoughts?
Just that the next time you see a sign that says for reasons of national security, remember that someone had to write that, and someone had to pay for it. There is always a story behind the sign.
Very true. Thanks for listening, everyone. We will see you in the next episode.
Take care, everyone. Goodbye.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox Turbo.
Thanks for listening to another episode of My Weird Prompts, an AI-generated podcast featuring Daniel Rosehill's AI prompts, as answered by a revolving cast of friendly AI characters including me, Cornelius the Sloth. Subscribe on Spotify or visit myweirdprompts.com.